The chandelier light shimmered off the polished mahogany tables in the grand dining hall of the seven-star Crescent Moon Hotel in Abu Dhabi, casting a golden glow that made the marble walls gleam like liquid starlight. It was a warm evening in September 2026, and the air buzzed with the arrogance of wealth, the clink of crystal glasses, and the low hum of power deals being whispered over plates of caviar. At the center of it all stood Layla Bennett, a 26-year-old waitress, her dark hair pulled back in a simple braid, a faint scar tracing her left temple, catching the light as she moved. Her beauty was understated, like a wildflower growing through a crack in concrete, polished, unassuming, but impossible to ignore once you saw it. Her black uniform, slightly worn at the cuffs, marked her as an outsider in this world of silk suits and diamond cufflinks. But Layla wasn't just any waitress. Raised in a modest Chicago suburb by an adoptive mother, a linguistics professor who drilled into her the weight of words and the strength of silence, Layla carried a quiet fire that most mistook for fragility. Tonight, though, that fire was about to burn through the room. Layla wasn't supposed to be here. She'd been called in last minute to cover for a co-worker who'd bailed, her feet already aching from a double shift, her shoulders tight from hauling trays of silver and crystal. Back home, her mother was fighting a losing battle with leukemia, the medical bills piling up like a storm cloud that refused to break. Every dollar Layla earned went to keeping her mom alive, but the latest text from her sister insurance denied again. We're out of time had hit her like a fist to the chest. She'd slipped her phone back into her apron, wiped her hands, and stepped into the lion's den of this private dining hall, reserved for the elite tycoons, diplomats, and socialites who wore their privilege like armor. The air was thick with the scent of expensive cologne and sharper condescension. Eyes followed Layla as she moved, sizing her up, dismissing her scuffed shoes and unadorned hands. To them, she was invisible, a prop in their gilded world. At the head of the table sat Khalid Al-Mansour, a 52-year-old oil magnate with a broad frame, piercing eyes, and a tongue that cut like a blade. His silk suit gleamed under the chandeliers, his presence commanding the room like a king holding court. To his right was his daughter, Noor, a 23-year-old studying finance in London, her sharp gaze scanning the room as if cataloging every word, every slight. The table was a parade of a Gosa senator with a loosened tie and a laugh that echoed hollowly, a tech mogul with slicked-back hair and a watch that screamed wealth, and Marina, a socialite whose emerald necklace and brittle smile hid a venomous streak. They were here for a gala, a night of deals and dominance, and Layla was just a shadow in their game. As Layla set down a crystal glass of wine, Khalid's voice sliced through the chatter, his Arabic sharp and mocking. "A lowly thing like her dares touch my crystal," he sneered, his words sparking laughter that rippled across the table, certain the American waitress understood nothing. Layla's hand trembled for a split second, but she kept her head down, placing the glass with precision. The laughter stung, but it wasn't new. She'd heard worse tonight. In the kitchen, during a fleeting break, her phone had buzzed with that crushing text about her mom. Now, as she moved to the next guest, a woman in a sapphire gown leaned toward her friend, her whisper cutting. "Is this really the best they could find to serve us?" Layla's jaw tightened, but her tray stayed steady, her face a mask of calm. The insults came faster now, each one sharper, more personal. The tech mogul, his cufflinks flashing, pointed at her apron. Did she stitch that herself? Looks like it came from a thrift shop. The table snickered, heads turning to stare at Layla's frayed hem. A woman with ruby earrings chimed in, her tone dripping with mockery. Maybe she's saving up for something better. Good luck on a waitress's pay. The laughter swelled, a cruel tide pulling the room along. Noor shifted in her seat, her fingers pausing on her glass, her eyes flicking to Layla with a flicker of unease. Layla kept moving, her steps measured, her silence louder than their words. Then Marina leaned forward, her voice honeyed but venomous. "Letting someone like her serve us is already a gift, don't you think?" The table roared, glasses clinking as if she'd delivered a punchline for the ages. Layla's hand shook as she poured water for the senator, the liquid sloshing just enough to betray her nerves. She caught Noor's gaze for a fleeting moment. Noor wasn't laughing, her fingers twisting her napkin like she was holding back a storm. Khalid leaned back, his smirk wide, his Arabic cutting again. "Look at her fumbling. like she's lost in a bazaar. The senator chuckled, his face flushed from wine. Probably just here for the tips, he said, nudging the tech mogul, who snorted. Tips in that outfit. She's lucky we let her in the door. The laughter rolled on, a chorus bouncing off the marble walls, growing sharper, crueler. A young man in a tailored blazer, his hair gelled to perfection, leaned across the table, his voice dripping with sarcasm. I bet she's never even been to a place like this before tonight. Look at her holding that tray like it's her first day. A woman in a velvet dress tossed her head back, laughing. She probably thinks this is the peak of glamour. Poor thing. Layla's shoulders stiffened, but she didn't pause, refilling a pitcher with a steady hand, her eyes catching the light sharp, unyielding. Noor's napkin was now crumpled in her lap, her knuckles white as she gripped it. Then Layla paused, her hand still for the first time. She straightened, her eyes locking onto Khaled's. The room didn't notice right away, but Noor did, her breath catching. Layla's voice was calm, her Arabic flawless, resonating like a bell in the gilded hall. The crystal does not diminish the one who holds it. It only mirrors the dignity of the one who drinks from it. The words landed like a thunderbolt. The laughter died. Khaled's smirk vanished, his face paling as if he'd been struck. The senator coughed, his tie suddenly choking him. A diplomat with a silver pin gasped, whispering, "She understands Arabic." Noor's eyes sparked, a small smile breaking across her face like sunlight through a storm. The table froze, forks hovering, glasses suspended in midair. The tech mogul shifted, his watch glinting as he tried to laugh it off. "That's unexpected," he muttered, his voice fading. Marina's necklace seemed to tighten around her throat, her confidence cracking. Layla stood tall, hands clasped, her gaze steady but not defiant. A server nearby hesitated, her eyes wide with awe and fear, whispering to a co-worker who glanced at Layla and quickly looked away. The guests' murmurs grew sharper, more curious. A man in a charcoal suit leaned forward, his tone dismissive but uncertain. "So she knows a few words. Doesn't mean she belongs here." His eyes searched Layla for a crack, but she adjusted a napkin, her fingers steady, her lips twitching with something unspoken. Noor's smile faded slightly, her eyes darting between her father and Layla, sensing a storm brewing. Khaled recovered, switching to English to reclaim control, his laugh forced. "She probably memorized some tourist phrases. Don't be impressed." Marina jumped in, eager to dismiss her. "Exactly. It's just mimicry, like a parrot in a cheap uniform." The senator nodded, trying to regain his swagger. "Let's not get carried away. She's still just the help." Whispers rippled through the guests. "No way she's fluent," one said. "She's bluffing," another muttered. Khaled folded his arms, his eyes narrowing. "If you really know it, prove it. Say something worth hearing." A woman in a gold gown tapped her fork against her plate, the sound sharp and deliberate. "Let's have some fun," she said, her voice carrying. "Recite something impressive, or are you just a one-trick pony?" The table laughed, a few guests clapping like it was a circus act. Layla's hand paused on a glass, her fingers tightening for a moment before relaxing. She didn't look at the woman, but her shoulders squared, her posture commanding attention. Noor's eyes widened, her breath shallow, as if she knew something monumental was coming. The room leaned in, waiting for Layla to falter. Layla set down the glass, her movement deliberate, like she was giving them time to stew in their doubt. She looked at Khaled, her eyes sharp with clarity, and began reciting a poem by Al-Mutanabbi, her voice soft but heavy with history. The words flowed like a desert wind, each syllable perfect, the rhythm alive with centuries of meaning. A scholar at the table, his glasses slipping down his nose, nearly dropped his fork. "That's extraordinary," he said, his voice trembling. "Only someone who's lived in the Arab world, studied it deeply, could speak like that." The guests turned to Khaled, their eyes expectant, some accusing. Noor whispered, "Father, she got every word right." Her voice cut through the silence like a blade. Khaled's jaw tightened, his fingers tapping a nervous rhythm. Marina's face flushed, her necklace suddenly heavy. Layla didn't linger. She moved to the next guest, refilling a glass, her face unreadable, like she hadn't just flipped the room upside down. A man with a trimmed beard leaned back, his voice dripping with condescension. "Pretty words for a waitress. Bet she learned it to impress tourists." His comment drew a few chuckles, but they were quieter now, less certain. Layla's hand paused mid-motion as she set down a pitcher, her eyes flicking to him briefly before returning to her work. The room waited for her to bite, but she didn't. Her silence was a wall they couldn't breach. Khalid wasn't done. His voice rose, sharp and desperate. Poetry's easy. Flowery words don't mean you understand anything real. What do you know about finance? Trade. He nodded to the tech mogul, who grinned and asked Layla a dense question in Arabic about regional tariffs and gas markets, layered with jargon meant to trip her up. The senator chuckled, muttering, "This will end her." Marina sipped her wine, smirking. "Let's see her fake this." Layla listened, her head tilted, her eyes bright with focus. Noor's hands clenched under the table, her breath shallow. Layla didn't hesitate. She answered in Arabic, her voice clear, laying out a precise analysis of trade routes, economic impacts, and recent deals, citing figures like she'd written the reports herself. The senator's jaw dropped. He clapped slowly, then faster. "That's not just fluency," he said, his voice carrying. "That's expertise." The room shifted, guests looking at Layla with awe, others with unease. Khalid's face tightened, sweat beading on his forehead. Noor's hands relaxed, her eyes shining with pride. Layla nodded once, polite, and cleared a plate, her movements steady as ever. The chatter quieted, the laughter gone. A diplomat with gray hair whispered, "Who is she?" A woman in a ruby dress tilted her head, her voice low but cutting. "She's probably just showing off for attention. People like her always do." Layla's hand paused as she adjusted a wine bottle, her eyes narrowing slightly. She didn't respond, but her posture grew sharper, more deliberate. Noor's lips parted, but she stayed silent, her eyes locked on Layla. Khalid's voice cut through, bitter and desperate. "A servant's still a servant. Language doesn't change your place." Marina laughed, her necklace glinting. "Exactly. She's just tonight's entertainment." Layla's lips curved not a smile, but something sharper, like she'd heard it all before. She reached into her apron, pulling out a worn envelope stamped with a royal seal. She opened it carefully and read aloud, her voice steady. "Full honorary scholarship granted to Layla Bennett, signed by Khalid Al-Mansour." The room gasped, the sound sucking the air from the hall. Khalid's face went white, his hands trembling. Years ago, he'd signed that scholarship, one of many, and forgotten her entirely. Layla looked into his eyes, her voice piercing. "You forget many, but we never forget you." Noor stood, her chair scraping, and crossed the room, throwing her arms around Layla. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. Layla hugged her back, her face soft but firm. The applause started slowly, then grew into a roar. Khalid sat frozen, his world crumbling. Marina stared at her wine glass, her face red. The tech mogul looked away, his smirk gone. Layla stepped back, resuming her work, but every eye followed her now. By morning, a guest's shaky video of Layla's reply had gone viral, racking up millions of views. Comments flooded in. She shut him down with class. Who is this woman? Khalid got what he deserved. The tech mogul's sponsorship deals vanished by noon. Marina's social circle turned on her, her invitations drying up. The senator's smug face became a meme, his campaign ads pulled. A week later, a reporter approached Layla during a break, notepad in hand. "Your stories inspired millions," she said. "What did it feel like to stand up to them?" Layla leaned against the counter, her apron folded, her eyes distant. "It felt like telling the truth," she said, then turned back to her work. Khalid's company ousted him, his reputation in tatters. Noor visited Layla, pressing a notebook of handwritten apologies into her hand. Layla nodded, slipping it into her pocket, her eyes soft. Years ago, in a small Chicago apartment, her adoptive mother had taught her Arabic by lamplight, her voice echoing. "Words are power, Layla. Use them wisely." Now, walking home under Abu Dhabi's glowing skyline, Layla carried that lesson in her scuffed shoes, her steady steps, her unbroken heart. Layla's life didn't change much. She still worked double shifts, still sent money home. But her presence was different, stronger, surer. A coworker handed her a tip one night, his voice low. "You're more than this place, Layla." She nodded, her eyes bright with something unspoken. One evening, a young girl approached, clutching a drawing of a woman surrounded by stars. I saw you online, she said shyly. You're so brave. Layla knelt, her voice warm. Thank you. The restaurant grew quieter as the story faded, but Layla's presence lingered. A regular customer, his jacket worn, slid her a tip. You made us think twice, kid, he said. Layla nodded, the weight of his words settling in her. You felt that sting, haven't you? When someone judges you for your clothes, your job, your place in their world. You've stood in rooms where you didn't belong, where the air turned cold, and you kept going, your silence louder than their words. Layla's story is yours, too. It's about standing tall, letting the truth speak when the world tries to drown you out. So, what do you think? Did Layla go too far, or not far enough? Should she have walked away, or was her stand worth the chaos? Where are you reading from? And what's a moment when you had to prove someone wrong? Drop a comment, hit that like button, and subscribe to join us for more stories that cut deep and lift you up.